Happy. Thank you. Minister, shall we start at 1:26 or shall we wait for 1:30? Are you SABC ETV live yet? Okay, so we can start. 1:30 would be good. Okay, shall we sing in the meantime? Okay, Sam, let's start, please. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming and being here. I am joined by Minister Nhleko, who will deal just maybe on process points, really. The first part is that we will deal with the presentation of the issue of the security upgrades in relation to the private residence of the state president. The second part of the presentation will be Minister Nhleko also in terms of taking us through steps that have been taken administratively and otherwise by the Department of Public Works in dealing with the issues that were highlighted in the Public Protector's report and other reports, investigative reports that have been led on the side of government. The second process point is that in the presentation of this particular report, we will also factor in demonstrations of how certain issues identified and queried by the public protector were intended or are intended to work. So it's part of the presentation that will be running today. Firstly, I wish to acknowledge and thank the Minister of Public Works, Mr. Nhleko, for the invaluable contribution that he made by volunteering relevant documents in relation to this work. Secondly, I thank the reference group and its members, and in particular the security experts therein who provided incisive investigative analysis pertaining to this work. We are also appreciative of the contributions of the fire officer of Nkandla municipality, Mr. Ntombela, and the chief fire officer of Umhlatuze municipality, Mr. Vumba, the cultural expert, Professor Njangase, and the advising architect, Mr. Mhlaba, the PIDS technician, Mr. Mlaulo, as well as the advising engineer, Mr. Cyril Gamede. We also take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the President of the Republic of South Africa for his cooperation and for providing access to his homestead. And lastly, we thank the Acting Secretary of Police for providing technical, administrative, and logistical support for this work. The security upgrades in the presidential homestead in Nkandla has dominated public discourse since November 2011, when the matter first appeared in the Mail and Guardian. It gained momentum after formal complaints were lodged with the public protector, first in December 2011, and then in late 2012, after a further newspaper article appeared in the city press. The origins and positioning of this discourse are important, as they reflect the mindsets and cultural orientation that inform the interpretation of the nature and the validity of the upgrades that were effected at the presidential homestead in Nkandla. Taking into account the magnitude and intensity of scrutiny that the security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President have been subjected to, the scope of this report is confined to the mandate given to the Minister of Police by Parliament through the ad hoc committee to consider the report by the President regarding the security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President. The President, His Excellency, Mr. Jacob Zuma, in his report to the National Assembly regarding the security upgrades on the 14th of August 2014, stated that, I quote, "I deem the following to be appropriate. The Minister of Police, as the implementing minister under the National Key Points Act, to expedite the review of this legislation which is currently underway and to report to Cabinet periodically of the progress in this regard. And the Minister of Police, as the designated minister under the National Key Points Act, to report to Cabinet on a determination as to whether the President is liable for any contribution in respect of the security upgrades having regard to the legislation, past practices, culture, and findings contained in the respective reports," close quote. This report also responds to the recommendation 5.9 arising from the ad hoc committee to consider the report by the President regarding the security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President, adopted by the National Assembly on the 11th November 2014, relating to what, quote unquote, what constitutes security and non-security upgrades, as expressed in correspondence from the Speaker of the National Assembly to the Minister of Police, dated the 29th of December 2014. A brief report was submitted to the Speaker of the National Assembly in February 2015 in response to the recommendations as expressed below. On establishing a technical team of qualified security experts to undertake an evaluation of the existing security features at Nkandla, its effectiveness and its appropriateness in relation to the Special Investigation Unit report, a point to which the Minister of Police indicated that a report will be presented before Parliament by the end of March 2015. Secondly, on assessing the policy and regulatory gaps relating to securing the private residences of political office bearers. In this regard, the Minister of Police stated that the Civilian Secretariat for Police has undertaken a comprehensive review of all policies, legislation, including the National Key Points Act, Act 102 of 1980, regulations and court judgments pertaining to the national key points. The outcomes of this review highlighted the need for a national critical infrastructure protection policy, and the policy is currently before Cabinet, and will be introduced to Parliament after the Cabinet process would have been completed. Thirdly, on the question of a comprehensive review of the National Key Points Act, Act 102 of 1980, in response to which the Minister of Police stated that the process of reviewing the Act commenced in 2008, given that conditions had changed significantly since 1980 and a number of policy gaps were detected. It was decided that a National Critical Infrastructure Protection Bill be developed in line with the National Critical Infrastructure Protection Policy, which will seek to repeal the National Key Points Act. The National Critical Infrastructure Protection Bill, which is currently within the Cabinet process, will be published in the Government Gazette alongside the release of the National Critical Infrastructure Protection Policy for public comment. This report that is being tabled here today is focused on the alleged non-security features. The Public Protector had examined all complaints related to the security upgrades of the President's private residence in Nkandla and has confirmed that no public funds were used to upgrade the private residence of the President, with the exception of specific features which were listed as questionable, namely the swimming pool, the new crawl, the visitors center, and the amphitheater. This report presents a careful analysis of each of the features and its purposes, as well as the context that informed its construction. I do believe that my recommendation in respect of a determination as assigned by Parliament will assist in amicably concluding this matter. The purpose of this report is to inform Parliament of the outcomes of the assessment of the security features in Nkandla, the private residence of the President, with specific reference to the features that the Public Protector's report refers to as non-security. This report further determines whether the President is liable for any contribution in respect of the security upgrades. In responding to the finding of the Public Protector in relation to the non-security features, this report further honors the determination by the ad hoc committee to consider the report by the President regarding the security upgrades at the private residence of the President, that, I quote, "It would be premature for the committee to make a finding of undue enrichment prior to the matter having been attended to by the relevant security practitioners consistently with the Cabinet Memorandum of 2003, close quote." The President, in his report to Parliament on the 14th of August 2014, directed the Minister of Police to, among others, make a determination regarding his financial liability in relation to the findings of the Public Protector. The request was followed up by further correspondence from the Speaker of the National Assembly on the 29th December 2014 pertaining to security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President, requesting that the Minister attends to the recommendations of the Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee. There have been various investigative reports undertaken regarding this matter, all of which were considered when developing this report that we're presenting here today. These include the investigation report Prestige Project A on security measures, the President's private residence in Nkandla by the Department of Public Works, dated 28 January 2013, the Interministerial Security Cluster Task Team report of the 19th of December 2013, Secure in Comfort by the Public Protector, dated the 19th of March 2014, the report to the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the security upgrade at the Nkandla private residence of His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, and that's from the side of the Presidency on the 14th of August 2014, the Special Investigation Unit final report to the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, from the Special Investigation Unit, dated 20 August 2014. Finally, the report of the ad hoc committee to consider the report by the President regarding the security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President. It's by Parliament on the 11th of November 2014. It should be noted that a number of investigations and subsequent reports have been generated around the security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President, amongst which are listed above. It should further be noted that going through these reports by different investigative arms of government, there are a number of points of convergence that emerge. Here, under is the summation of points of convergence. On whether the 2003 Cabinet policy is applicable, the Public Protector made similar findings with the task team by Public Works as well as the SIU. On whether the area was declared a national key point, the Public Protector, the task team by Public Works and SIU, I'm sorry, not SIU, but the Public Protector and the task team made similar findings. The SIU felt that it was not applicable. On the question of the violation of the national key point, the findings are similar between the Public Protector, the task team by Public Works, but certainly the SIU did not deal with that question. On the question of the violation of supply chain policy, treasury regulations, and the Constitution, the Public Protector, the task team by Public Works, SIU made similar findings. On whether the project was improperly managed, the findings are the same between the Public Protector, the task team, and the Special Investigation Unit. On the question of the project not properly budgeted for, the findings are similar between the Public Protector, the task team, Public Works, as well as the SIU. On the question of non-compliance with Government Immovable Assets Act, the task team, Public Works, and Public Protector made similar findings. The SIU did not deal with that question. On the question of the excessive amounts spent or costs allowed to escalate, findings of a similar nature were made by the Public Protector, the Public Works, the task team, and the SIU. On the question of the Public Works officials found to have violated policy and prescripts, the findings are similar between the SIU, the task team by Public Works, as well as the Public Protector. On the question of public funds, whether or not public funds were used to build the President's house, the finding is the same between the Public Protector, that no funds were used to build the President's house. No public funds, were used to build the President's house. The similar finding is also made by the task team by Public Works. SIU did not deal with that question. On failure to secure security clearance for service providers, the Public Works task team made similar findings together with the Public Protector, and the SIU did not deal with that question. On the question of failure to comply with Treasury Regulations 16A, the findings are the same between the Public Protector, the task team, Public Works, and the SIU. On funds transferred from other projects like Inner City Regeneration and Dolomite, the findings are the same between the Public Protector, the task team, Public Works, as well as the SIU. On the recommendations that we made, that the first recommendation was that the National Key Point Act needed to be reviewed. The Public Protector made such a finding and recommendation. The task team, Public Works, made a similar recommendation, and this issue is being now implemented. The SIU did not deal with that question. On the recommendation that the Department of Public Works take steps against any officials that have violated procedures, Public Works made a similar recommendation, and so was the task team by Public Works. The SIU did not deal with it. At a later point, when we present this report, the Minister of Public Works will take us through measures that have also been taken and instituted in this regard. On the question of the review of delegation supply chain management to regional office, the public protector made a recommendation in this regard, and so did the task team Public Works, and SIU did not deal with that question. It was recommended that the development of police on prestige projects should be undertaken. Public Works, as well as the Public Protector, made similar findings in that regard, with the exception, of course, of the SIU. That the lease agreement be entered into between the Department of Public Works and Ngonyama Trust. The recommendations are similar between the Department of Public Works task team and the Public Protector. The SIU did not deal with this question. Clearly, the above table indicates that there is no dispute amongst the Public Protector, the Department of Public Works task team, the Special Investigation Unit, and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee reports that the security upgrades undertaken in the private residence of the State President were necessary. All parties accept that the Department of Public Works and the security entities were within their mandates as well as the constitutional obligation to do so. Of specific relevance is the finding by the Public Protector in her report on Nkandla security upgrades that, among others, I quote, President J.G. Zuma improperly benefited from the measures implemented in the name of security, which include non-security comforts such as the visitor center, swimming pool, amphitheater, cattle crawl with culvert, and chicken run, close quote. The picture that appears in the report below depicts the layout of the entire private residence of the President in Nkandla from an aerial point of view. This aerial view shows the high security zone in red, the outer perimeter fence in yellow, and the blue landmarks points to the actual location of the features in dispute. It is apparent from the various reports that the Nkandla Prestige project cost the state in the region of 216 million rands, according to the Special Investigation Report, page 1, paragraph 1 of that report dated the 24th August 2014. The Department of Public Works documents show that the above amount as at December 2012 was confirmed to be at 206,420,644 rands, 28 cents. That's paragraph 111 of the SIU report. According to the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of the Public Works Memorandum dated November 2012, this amount was divided into two. The first portion is the cost of the security features, which amounted to 71,212,621,077 cents, including consultancy and/or professional fees. The remainder of 135,208,022 rands, 51 cents was the cost of departmental operational needs, such as the clinic, the SAPS, and the South African National Defence Force staff quarters and needs, and consultancy fees, amongst others. Consultancy and/or professional fees amounted to 20,688,736 rands, 89 cents. Therefore, the total for security features, excluding the consultancy and/or professional fees, is 50,523,884 rands, 88 cents. This is according to the Department of Public Works Investigation Report, page 31, paragraph 112 and 114. It appears from the Public Works document that an amount of 10 million rands was expected to be paid by the President for what was referred to as private expenses. This amount of 10 million rands was further reduced to an amount of 3 million rands, and no reasonable and clear explanation was given for how this amount was determined and what led to the reduction. Page 207 of the same SIU report, under the heading Civil Claims, under Claim B, paragraph 6, states that, I quote, "After his appointment, Makhanya proceeded to authorize and oversee the implementation of improvements and the installation of security measures at Nkandla in excess of and beyond the security assessments and requirements that had been determined by the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence Force, and at a cost far more than that was approved and budgeted for by the Department of Public Works," close quote. It further states that Ibongo consultants who provided civil and structural advice were paid a total of 6,006,497 rands 36 cents. However, this was 255,681 rands 51 cents more than they should have been paid, according to the SIU report, page 211 and paragraph 30 of that report. The SIU report acknowledges that, I quote, "On 28 May 2009, the South African Police Service visited Nkandla to conduct their first assessment after Mr. Zuma had become president. The South African Police Service then prepared a further assessment report. The report does not mention costs. This is unsurprising, as the upgrades were to be implemented by the Department of Public Works, which would also bear the costs of the upgrades, save for those specific to the accommodation requirements of the South African Police Service personnel," close quote. This assessment report was handed over to the Department of Public Works Acting DG on the 9th of June 2009. The Prestige project was conducted as a high security project. The SIU report, page 28, paragraph 61, suggests that the minutes of the meetings held relevant to this project could not be located, and the SIU was informed that the meetings were classified as special meetings and there were no recordings. These meetings, convened by the Department of Public Works, were attended by private contractors and/or consultants and officials from the following government departments, namely the South African Police Service, the Department of Defense, and the State Security. The adjustments were allegedly presented in subsequent meetings where they would have been approved by various stakeholders present. The one version is that in those meetings, further requests for adjusting the scope were received from departments or security agencies. The other version, from the South African Police Service represented by Brigadier Adendorf, is that, I quote, "Department of Public Works held weekly site meetings during which design changes were discussed and/or made by private professionals." This is page 171, paragraph 79 of the SIU report. The facts as contained in the Department of Public Works Investigation Report of 2014, page 34, paragraph 123 thereof, state that the following contractors did not go through security clearance process as was a prerequisite, namely CA Deloitte, which is a security company, Ibongo Consultants, a civil and structural engineers company, Ilanga Letu Consulting, a quantity surveyor, Mina Makhanya Architects, the principal agent and an architectural design expert, Mustafa and Kachalia CC, a mechanical engineer, Igoda, an electrical and Magumane Information Systems, an electronic detection system company. These contractors were limited in terms of understanding explicitly the end user's intention and purpose, and were therefore not equipped to make a determination on what constituted private and public costs. This argument is supported by Mr. Makhanya of Nkandla Architects, who considered that he and his team of experts comprised of architects and engineers were not vetted and did not have security clearance, though they were cautioned about the sensitivities of this project. Accordingly, they were not allowed to keep any documents related to the project. Mr. Makhanya, who's among the persons who was approached in the conduct of this work to do cost determination, stated that he, as an architect, is not trained to determine how the president benefits from the government-sponsored security measures, and he believes his engineering team is also not competent in that field. However, they tried to deliver what the client, the Department of Public Works, wanted from them. There was no measuring instrument and/or legal basis used to make this determination, according to Mr. Makhanya. Furthermore, the lack of security clearance also meant that the end-user design and use of certain facilities or areas could not be divulged to the Makhanya team, and hence their architectural plans named facilities differently to those of the security objectives. Basically, they had to design and build certain structures, and technicians from the South African Police Service or the State Security Agency and the South African National Defence Force would thereafter come to install their equipment and reconfigure where necessary. This made project management and project coordination difficult and introduced its own set of complications. Cost determination could not have been informed by the National Key Points Act, Act number 102 of 1980, as it is not applicable in this particular instance. What is applicable is the Cabinet Memorandum dated 20 August 2003, which caters for the security interests of the President, Deputy President, and former Presidents and Deputies. It should be further noted that in line with the international best practice, the Cabinet Memorandum does not place a cap on the costs to be spent on the protection of the above VIPs. Furthermore, the Ministerial Handbook is also not applicable in this case, as it only provides guidelines for benefits and privileges to which members of the executive and their families are entitled to in the execution of their duties. By its very nature and character, the Ministerial Handbook excludes the President, Deputy President, and former Presidents and Deputies. The Department of Public Works Investigation Report of 2014, page 29, paragraph 104, states that, I quote, "It is evident from the terms of the Cabinet decision and policy approved that the main consideration was the safety of the President. It is further clear that the decision does not place any limit on the amount to be spent on the security upgrades to the residences of sitting presidents and deputy presidents as well as their predecessors," close quote. Chapter 5 of the SIU report makes reference to various features built in Nkandla that are said to have been inflated in cost price and extended in scope, without explicit and necessary approval of the departments concerned. In particular, page 140 of the SIU report, paragraph 45, states that, I quote, "In addition, Makhanya designed and authorized the construction of the 175 kiloliter fire pool. The total amount paid for the fire pool and VIP parking was 3,964,239 rands. And this point is noted, and the fire pool shall be dealt with in context hereunder. Of relevance to the above point is page 7 of the Department of Public Works Investigation Report, paragraph 23 and 24, which states that, I quote, On 21 May 2009, the professionals of DPW visited the President's residence and prepared a scope or proposal on security upgrades to be effected at the residence. According to the initial scope by Public Works, the estimated cost was approximately 27 million. It should be noted that the initial scope and proposal has no input from the South African Police, Department of Defense, or National Intelligence Agency, close quote. Excuse me. The Department of Public Works proposals on security upgrades with the heading Durban Project A site visit dated 21st May 2009, Annexure B, referred to above, and observed that the unnumbered third page of this report, under the topic Architectural, contains a list of proposed upgrades. One of the upgrades that appear under letter F is a proposed swimming pool to be used as a reserve for firefighting. The letter F depicts a swimming pool drawing in an adjacent aerial design of the private residence. The intention to build a fire pool for firefighting and the conceptualization of extending its use by the surrounding communities as a swimming facility is captured in the SIU report based on their interview with the then Deputy Minister of Public Works, who stated that, I quote, she had been involved in the provision of the fire pool. She said the possibility of building a fire pool and possible building of swimming pool for use by surrounding communities had been discussed and cost estimates were to be prepared. She did not discuss the fire pool with the President, close quote. This is page 177, paragraph 98 of the SIU report. Page 132, paragraph 12 of the SIU report speaks to a table, a spreadsheet in other words, to the extent that I quote unquote identifies the security requirements as listed in the security assessments and compares them to what was exactly constructed. In that particular table, there is a column that deals with the fire pool and or swimming pool. It states that, I quote, the fire pool was not required or requested by the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence Force, but later the SAPS and the SANDF included a fire pool as an alternative for firefighting, close quote. In the original security evaluation report by the South African Police Service, the issue of firefighting capability was raised on page 4 thereof. The open water source, in other words, a fire pool, has therefore been a requirement at various stages from design to development and construction by different role players. The overriding intent of the upgrades is the safety and security of the President and Head of State. It is clear that the South African Police Service had in all its actions always been focused on safety and security needs. This report that we're presenting here today seeks to unpack the security needs as they appear in various reports and focuses on the questioned features. That is whether the crawl with culvert, chicken run, swimming pool, amphitheater, and the visitor center, as identified by the public protector, are security features. That is whether they enhance, complement, or form part and parcel of protective security measures. It must be noted that it does not deal with the project costs, cost inflations, deviations from applicable policies, and non-conformity to regulations or procedures with regard to the Nkandla project. There are other state institutions that are dealing with those particular matters, as reflected, as cited earlier on, that the Minister of Public Works will also take us through steps and measures that have been taken to deal with some of these issues. As a result of this investigation, the positioning and security-related purpose of some of these features have been exposed to the general public, as well as to hostile forces that may pose a threat to state security. This is an unprecedented exposure of a president's security detail, and it will need security practitioners to analyze the extent to which this report contributes to continued manifest threats around the president and how such threats should be mitigated. In compiling this report, information, analysis, and contextualization were solicited from protective security practitioners within the South African Police Service and the State Security Agency. The methodology applied was based on a framework of qualitative research, which includes a review of literature and interviews. Desktop research was also conducted. Sorry. Cheers. Thank you. Various reports and legal instruments that were consulted in compiling this report include the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the South African Police Service Act of 1995 and regulations, the National Strategic Intelligence Act of 2002, Minimum Information Security Standards of 1996, Minimum Physical Security Standards of 2008, the Public Protector's Report of 2014, the Department of Public Works Prestige Project A of 2011, Security Measures, the SAPS Security Evaluation Report reference S2/26/2/6, open bracket 02, close bracket, open bracket 2/99, close bracket, over 2001. Ibongo Consulting CC Civil Engineering Services Report of 2012, the briefing notes on Nkandla by P.S. Masilo, Special Advisor to Minister T. Nhleko, 2014, the SIU report of 2014, and the report of the ad hoc committee to consider the report by the President regarding the security upgrades at the Nkandla private residence of the President of 11 November 2014. Furthermore, interviews were conducted with key technical persons with expertise in different fields, including chief fire officers, engineers, architects, and a cultural expert. Reports emanating from these interviews are also part of this report and accordingly annexed. This report is clinically limited in that it pronounces itself on the security features in question, which excludes the following: whether prices were inflated, whether supply chain management policy and national treasury regulations were violated, and who violated the above, any person to be criminally prosecuted, and whether there was any political interference. This report was compiled taking due consideration that the SAPS Security Evaluation Report was informed by the National Intelligence Act, Act 39 of 1994, as it pertains to counterintelligence, which defines counterintelligence as, I quote, measures and activities conducted, instituted, or taken to impede and to neutralize the effectiveness of foreign or hostile intelligence operations, to protect classified intelligence, and to counter subversion, sabotage, and terrorism aimed at or against personnel, strategic installations, or resources of the Republic, close quote. The analysis of reports and structures of the interviews were aimed at extracting information pertaining to critical questions as per focal areas articulated by Parliament's report. Hereunder are the matters of discussion. The features that require determination on whether or not these are security features or part thereof were the fire pool and or swimming pool, 2, the kraal or animal enclosure with culvert and chicken run, 3, the visitors center, and 4, the amphitheater and or soil retention wall. All these features were designed, approved, and built at the private residence of the President in Nkandla, even though some of them do not appear clearly on the security evaluation report or reports of one state department or the other. There were various equipment and security complementary features that are not clearly or specifically mentioned in the security appraisal reports, like the nature of firefighting equipment that must be on site, details of which were left entirely to the fire experts. Some of the security complementary features are considered and duly authorized by practitioners as they continue to monitor building progress, more specifically, technological equipment. This report does not deal with the procurement and authorization procedures thereof. It is noted that there are features or equipment recommended for the private residence of the President by security practitioners which are not yet installed. Most of the installations have been halted due to ongoing investigations. One such example is the motion detection beams constituting the inner perimeter of the high security zone and the control room. The pan, tilt, and zoom camera monitors with recording capabilities are also not yet installed. However, such equipment is recommended in the SAPS Security Appraisal Report, page 5 of 8. This report portrays a picture of how the security systems would work once completed, while acknowledging that many, if not all, security features and equipment are not complete for reasons stated above. In some instances, where security equipment is not yet installed, the SAPS have to compensate by deploying more members. This report complements the assertion that appears on page 5, paragraph 15 of the Department of Public Works internal briefing that states that, I quote, "It is only through the risk assessment that one can determine whether any security structure was reasonable, necessary or not. It is impossible for anyone who's not a security expert to come to the conclusion that a particular security structure was unnecessary," close quote. Our first discussion focuses on the construction of the fire pool and/or swimming pool. The South African Police Service Security Evaluation Report, page 4 of 8, paragraph 9, deals with the firefighting equipment and states that, I quote, firefighting equipment must be made available at the premises to be used when a need arises. All the huts within the homestead consist of thatch roof and are close to each other. It may be difficult to control fire when it occurs. If there is no relevant equipment, the system must be able to detect fire when it starts by sending a signal to the main security control room. The firefighting equipment must be maintained and approved in accordance with the National Fire Regulations, close quote. The above statement makes two critical points clear. Firstly, is that the fire equipment is essential, given the architecture of the homestead, and secondly, that firefighting capability must be on site. In developing this report, a number of officers with expertise in firefighting capability were engaged, including Mr. Vumba, the manager of fire and rescue services of Nkandla local municipality, who, after having tested the water pressure from the water mains supply, stated that, quote unquote, an open water source is the best for firefighting and nothing could be better than the pool or dam. The SAPS Security Evaluation Report, page 7, paragraph 15, deals with water supply and recognizes the shortage of such. It states that, I quote unquote, a new borehole must be made available at the premises as sufficient water supply is of utmost importance. The pictures below in this report illustrate how the fire pool and/or swimming pool is operated during firefighting. In terms of In terms of the Durban Prestige Project A, motivations and cost allocation summary dated 25 January 2011, the fire pool, groundwater storage facility intended for dual purpose, first to be used for firefighting in the case of emergency. The second use is recreational within the homestead. Note, bed with reservoir storage is easily accessed in case of emergency, close quote. To provide on-site complementary firefighting equipment, the suction pump with 1,500 liters a minute capacity and monitors with 16 centimeter diameter hose, 50 meters long, is permanently attached to the pool for any fire emergency. This capacity is useful to extinguish fire while the fire truck is on the way. It can also refill the truck during firefighting operation. The report by the civil engineering consultant Ibongo Consulting CC, dated 17 April 2012, in the Department of Public Works, Prestige Project A by H.M. Oberhoser, was considered in this regard, and it states that, I quote, water supply will be from existing 40 millimeter connection via a 90 millimeter diameter UVC pipe, class 16 pipe. Storage will be for 48 hours supply in a 250 kiloliter prefabricated steel Galaxy reservoir. The swimming pool will provide a further 138 kiloliter storage for fire protection backup, close quote. The SIU report acknowledges that 175 kiloliter storage pool was designed for firefighting backup. The SIU report states that, quote unquote, in addition, Makanya designed and authorized the construction of 175 kiloliter fire pool, and that's page 140, paragraph 45 of the SIU report. The Ibongo report further states under the topic fire water that, I quote, provision is made for storage capacity of 388 kiloliter, made up as follows: 250 kiloliters Galaxy reservoir plus the swimming pool volume of 138 kiloliters. Assuming that the supply is sufficient, then the 160 millimeter diameter supply will fill the storage in 4.5 hours. A booster connection is provided at the pool, close quote, and further that, quote unquote, provision is made for one hydrant and 2 hose reels to be used at the same time. A firefighting capability test was undertaken using open water source, namely the swimming pool, on one hand, and also using the fire hydrants that is linked to the water reservoir supplying household on the other hand. The local Nkandla and Mhlatuze fire and rescue services were requested to deploy their equipments, and that is the suction pump with double outlet, monitors with water compression and stand. The suction pump could also be used to refill the fire truck getting water from the swimming pool. On the 5th February 2015, an exercise was undertaken to establish the time it takes for the local Nkandla fire and rescue services team to react to an emergency at the president's private residence. The reaction vehicle arrived at least 1 hour, 10 minutes later, and they were not well equipped to deal with any fire threat. During the demonstration, the chief fire officer of Mhlatuze established that the suction pump could draw sufficient water from the pool at the required speed, whereas the fire hydrant lack of necessary water pressure was evident. The water suction engine cavitated while drawing water from the hydrant due to insufficient water pressure. The president's homestead has a number of thatch-roofed houses, and the previous arson incidents warranted the establishment of a comprehensive as well as reliable firefighting capability. The comprehensive fire prevention plan is to be implemented by firefighting plans. The second point that was also raised was that regular fire drills are also performed due to the size of the homestead and the number of family members residing in the homestead. The fire drills include identification of assembly points, use of emergency escape routes, and handling of portable fire extinguishers, fire hose, etc. The fire expert concluded, as per attached annexure, that the best water source that is available on site at Nkandla is the pool to replenish the fire engine. The pool is equally to be used when the fire breaks out by deploying the suction pump, linking it with monitors through fire hoses in order to extinguish fire while the truck is on its way, and this process is also illustrated. The 2 fire hydrants at the private residence of the President in Nkandla and 8 real fire hoses that are installed there have either very low pressure or no water at all. It should be noted that the water supply to Nkandla by Utungulu District Municipality is erratic, has low pressure, and at times runs out. And I would ask a firefighting video presentation and demonstration to be also activated in this instance.
So you don't have open it.
It must be somewhere. Are you well? Okay. Just bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. This is technology. I mean, police and technology. Telling you. Yeah, there we go.
Especially if you are pumping over a long distance. So due to friction loss, you end up with very little pressure.
This is the
So to boost that volume and pressure, then we use the system where a pump is placed near the water source.
I'm just looking at I'm taking this out to somebody.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. We just about 50% of the
fire engine is going to be basically our firefighting pump. We're going to have a line running out from fire pump, the top level pump, for firefighting. It is a 2 kilo pump, which uses straight petrol, clean petrol, and 2-stop oil. But both are poured in separate compartments, and they mix with each other automatically. The pump is capable of discharging 1,600 liters per minute through 2 lines, the 2 discharge lines that we have laid them out. So everybody can see. The pump can actually, as well, relay water to a considerable distance of about
Unless I keep on music. Oh, okay.
The other pumper which may be used for firefighting. We're going to run our lines to the fire engine tank. The two lines that you see laid out here. We'll make it now just as the fire engine tank, just to show you that the two lines reflect water from the hood to the pump there, and we want to convey it to the fire engine, and then the fire engine is going to convey water from its pump to the branch man, who will be doing the actual pump. So it can be used to run water from the pumping water source, like a pool or a dam. And we do that using the so-called suction hose.
Just so that you know, Rolo Ongolo has already tweeted there that by people speak comment.
Yeah, but I
Then that way we can be able to run a line from a pressure-fed supply to supply water to our pump, which will then impart energy to that water, which we can then use it to relate the further distance. We pressure, that's what basically the pump is imparting energy, and then also impart that velocity energy and convert the velocity energy to pressure energy, so that we can be able to put out fire. So this is the suction strainer that I was referring to. Any foreign method that can pass through this hole won't be detrimental to your plant. So this is actually capable of keeping up any death of matter. So when our pump we don't start, we lose the time within water because our atmospheric pressure does that for us. We are not sucking water, but the atmospheric pressure is pushing water into our pump. We can position it anywhere. Provided the distance allows us. If need be, we might need to bring another pump. If the pressure is not good, pressure and volume is not good, wherever the fire is to be, then we may have to bring another pump. It could be either a fire engine or a pump like that. We can position a pump somewhere else, dump water here, convey to that pump, boost the pressure and volume to another pump, and then from there the same will happen until the water reaches the pump. What we've just done now, it was just to demonstrate the pressure, how much pressure are we getting from the hydrant, and then as well checking to see what the discharge pressure after the water comes from the tank, how much pressure will it be at the branch main. So the pressure that I was only able to attain from the hydrant was 2 bars, and then the discharge was 3.5 bars, which ended up causing the pump to fail. So in other words, I ended up demanding more than what my hydrant supplied. So basically the hydrant drawing water from the open source, the firefighting as we have demonstrated earlier, is the best where it's spent. And the only way that you can get maximum water and maximum output is the public sector itself.
Yes, how are you? Yes, yes. There is a house that is on fire in the house of the president.
Where?
In the house of the president, near High School. Yeah, near High School, in the house of the president. My number? It's 072.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we then come to the second question, and the second question is the family crawl, the new crawl, and or animal enclosure with culvert. In the report itself, we've got the picture, that basically captures the family crawl. The other one is the new construction of what is referred to as the new crawl, or animal enclosure with the culvert. The construction of a crawl and or animal enclosure was regarded as a non-security feature by the public protector. The construction of the crawl and or animal enclosure and the relocation of the animal is, amongst others, discussed in the context of access control and perimeter intrusion, detection, fence technology management. The SAPS security evaluation report states that entrances to the homestead should be controlled and that security equipment and infrastructure should be installed in those entrances. Operational effectiveness of such security equipment and infrastructure necessitated non-interference. We then discussed the family crawl. According to scholars, Zulu Dictionary Dent Nyembezi of 2009, a cattle crawl is defined as isibaya. The term crawl is defined by the Pocket Oxford Dictionary of 2002 as 1, a traditional African village of huts, and 2, an enclosure for sheep and cattle. There is a problem with Fowler's definition in terms of a kraal being a traditional African village of huts, but he's certainly correct with the second definition, and that is an enclosure for sheep and cattle. And in line with the Zulu definition, a kraal is used for the following purposes. It is used as a storage space, a sacred space, a burial site, a meat-eating place, and for purposes of incisions. The president's residence has a kraal that the family built, which is at the center of the homestead. The kraal has significant spiritual and cultural value that extends beyond the storage of animals. Essentially, a kraal in its traditional sense is a spiritual and a sacred place of a homestead as stated in the paragraph above. And I would like this matter to be also captured in an interview of Professor Jangas, who's a cultural expert in this regard.
Let's talk about the sacred places amongst the black people, more so when we talk in terms of their religion, Islamic religion. We do have sacred places, holy places in fact. These, they are different. There are those that you find in a home. In a home, you will have what we call farm. This is the area earmarked within a particular house, where all, if there is a need to communicate with the ancestral spirit of the family, one will go there, and one will also ban him. The culture will tell one how to do this. For example, I'm saying one must go there, one must ban what we call in echo, and there must also be an animal to show the ancestral spirit that indeed there is going to be happiness after the ceremony. There must also be some part.
It's the same thing as
Is the area we call Isbaya. In English, usually they say it's a kraal, where you keep animals, in other words, livestock. You have Isbaya for the Izinkomo, cows. You also have Isbaya for Izimbuzi, goats, so and so on. But here the main one is the one that is for Izinkomo. This is for cows and oxen, bull, you name it. That's the one that is called it's a sacred place. In what way? In this way that some other ceremonies are done there. Some other ceremonies require that one must burn impepo in Isbayeni, and one must communicate with the ancestral spirit Isbayeni. The ancestral spirit in turn will convey such messages to Umvelingangi in Zulu God. Ukamata in Xhosa, so it goes on and on. So it is a sacred place. I'm talking about the family here.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The SAPS Security Evaluation Report on page 1 of 11 discusses perimeter protection and entrance gates with regard to perimeter protection. The security appraisal states that, amongst others, there should be a brick and mortar wall erected and fitted with a 6-strand electric fence. The electric fence must be divided into zones and be interfaced with the proposed intruder alarm system, as well as the CCTV camera system with analytics. The fence must be passive. Infrared motion detectors placed strategically along the fence in sensitive areas. And this is page 4, paragraph 10 of the SAPS evaluation report. In the report that we're presenting here today, well, the perimeter intruder detecting system is also demonstrated. Since the family kraal was or is located in the high security zone, the continuous use of the family kraal would interfere with the security motion detectors. It was recommended that the animals be relocated to the periphery of the homestead and outside the inner high security zone and within the outer perimeter security fence. Whilst the president's family considered to the animals being moved to a new enclosure and was constructed for security reasons, the complete removal of the family kraal was not considered to, as the family still uses it for cultural and traditional ceremonies, and the new construction is not a kraal, rather an animal enclosure, which puts cattle, goats, and chicken together. If all of the above is taken into account, it is clear that the president's family, in agreeing to shift the animals to the new enclosure, made a compromise in the interest of security. On the new animal enclosure with culvert, the SAPS security report on page 2 states that, I quote, the gates to the premises must be divided into 3. One main gate with access control, the second entrance for livestock, and the third entrance as an emergency gate. The security evaluation report stipulates that the kraals should have a separate entrance to the extent that there is no interface between the livestock and the security features, hence different gates, close quote. It is in this context that the animal enclosure with a culvert for the cattle, the goats, and chicken was constructed outside the high security zone in the periphery of the homestead. The new animal enclosure with culvert and chicken run was constructed in a remote location away from the high security zone or inner perimeter infrastructure so as to give effect to the fence technology and use thereof. The R&G consultancy report, page 28, paragraph 9.6, states that, I quote, the position of the kraal has been influenced by the new security line, culvert, and internal security access road, close quote. The new animal enclosure complies with the security requirement that animals should be kept outside the high security zone and have an outlet or culvert that allows no interface between livestock and the security infrastructure. The security infrastructure that should not interface with the animals include the outer perimeter automated intrusion detecting fence, and inner perimeter motion detecting beams as requested in the SAPS evaluation report, page 5 of 8. This move was necessary because an interface between the inner or outer perimeter fence technology and animals or human beings would have triggered the alarm, which in turn would have registered as a violation of the security zone at the control center. Therefore, allowing animals to roam around would have triggered continuous false alarms and rendered the entire security system ineffective. The picture below shows the culvert underneath the outer PIDS perimeter fence. And on the question of the culvert channels the animals in and out of the new kraals. The culvert channels the animals in and out of the new kraals and or enclosure such that the outer perimeter security system, your PIDS, as well as the inner perimeter motion detection beams, your MDB, is not interfered with, thereby avoiding interface and triggering false alarms. A Department of Public Works report dated June 2011, entitled Motivations and Cost Allocation Proposals number 4, provides the following motivation for the livestock culvert. I quote, livestock access in and out of the homestead is provided via an underpass punching through the high security fence. A trafficable cattle culvert pass under the fence, and there are gates at both ends of the culvert. This was a security design consideration which allow for continuous flow of the high security fence with less false alarm on motion detection, close quote. On the chicken run, the sensors on the PIDS fence and motion detector beams are very sensitive to the extent that they could easily be activated by free-running chicken. In this regard, free-running chicken needed to be confined to a chicken run outside the high security zone and away from the perimeter intrusion detection system, your PIDS fence technology. Constant false alarms, possibly caused by animals or persons, result in a tendency by security officers to either ignore any further alarms or simply switch off the system. It is for this reason that security practitioners recommended that the animals should be kept away from the outer and inner perimeter fence technology and be kept in the new enclosure with separate entrance and or exit, in other words, which we now refer to as a culvert. And in this regard, I would want us to show the video security appraisal of the SAPS, which also talks to the issue of the cattle kraal and the culvert.
conducted a security evaluation at the homestead of the President of the Republic of Roma in Nkandla in 1999 and again in 2001. In this video, we shall deal with the highlights of the first aspect that we will be dealing with is the identified need for firefighting capabilities to be on site at Nkandla, which are to be maintained and approved in accordance with the National Fire Regulation. It is the intruder alarm system that cover all the sensitive areas within the homestead and the premises and linked to the security control room. This system is made up of strategically placed motion detection beams, MDB. This system is also complemented by red flashers units with battery backup that are placed in prominent places outside the individual houses. The entire system is divided into zones. In the security evaluation report, there is a clear request for motion tracking system linked to the PTZ cameras with the capability to record and store data. Whenever there is a zone violation caused either by human beings or animals interfacing with the fence in any zone, the channel will send an alarm signal to the control room through remote modem, and the PTZ camera will immediately transmit a view by remote as well. The following video clips demonstrate the PTZ camera in operation, which is linked to the motion tracking system. The motion tracking system is linked to infrared cameras for night vision operation. This camera has picked up an intruder crawling towards the fence. With the use of PIDS fence technology, animals may cause constant false alarms. This video clip shows the new animal enclosure that is strategically located at the periphery of the homestead, so as to avoid animals interfacing with the perimeter intrusion detection system and motion detectors within the high security zone. The animals are channeled in and out of the kraal through the culvert, and the culvert is underneath the fence security technology. This maintains the effectiveness and efficiency of the security technology while allowing the state president to keep his livestock in the new animal enclosure.
Thank you very much. We now then come to the issue of the visitors center. It should be noted that according to the RNG consultancy report, the visitor center and control room were requested by the South African Police Service. Further, that the visitor center is on top of the SAPS control room at the homestead. The President of the Republic is also a head of state in terms of the Constitution, Chapter 5, Section 83A, and he continues to discharge his responsibilities even when at his residences. Such engagements include receiving and hosting presidents from other countries and high-profile local and international guests. Executive guests have to be received in an area that meets appropriate control, security, and protocol norms and standards. Accordingly, similar facilities that are used by the President for official engagements exist as his various residences, and that is in Cape Town, Nathi Nhleko, Pretoria, Mahlambandlove, and Sefako Makhanto Guest House, and Durban JL Dube House, and such a facility also needed to be constructed at Nkandla, taking into cognizance that Nkandla is a private residence of the president. However, such meetings as stated above do take place. These meetings necessitate the creation of conducive and appropriate security environment, that is protocol, information, and physical security. When the president is at his private residence, he is regularly visited by locals who have complaints, grievances, or problems for the attention of the president. Attending to these complaints is part of the president's statutory and political obligations. On such occasions, it is imperative that crowd control and management is effected and any security risk mitigated. In this regard, the visitor center is key to ensuring security control, which includes people movement and control. The visitor center at the private residence of the president in Nkandla is strategically positioned such that it allows for the necessary security separation of private activities from family dwellings and the president's official and public engagements at this facility. There is a need for this facility so as to control and secure all the president's meetings and other high-level official engagements in line with acceptable protocols and/or etiquette norms and standards. Former presidents also play a role within the regional politics in the Southern African Development Community, as well as at African Union level and within the panel of elders or panel of the wise organs. In this regard, the visitor center will be a fruitful expenditure even beyond his term of office. On the question of the amphitheater and/or ground retaining wall, according to Wikipedia, I quote, "The walls of the amphitheater are normally constructed in stepping dwarf walls that are suitable for people to sit comfortably and watch some kind of entertainment. The stage where entertainment occurs is always central, such that all theater goers are able to sit facing the stage and enjoy the entertainment. The theater would normally have electrical points to provide for entertainment or sound system in an appropriate stage." Close quote. The picture that, and this has been the case since the ancient Roman times, we then also show a picture of a typical amphitheater taken somewhere in Canada. The Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee observed that, I quote, "The land on which the President's private residence has been developed lies at a gradient of 40 to 70 degrees, which makes it more susceptible to flooding during storms. Due to the gradient, all construction activities such as earthworks and landscaping had to include fortifications, buttresses and paving for proper water flow and stormwater drainage," close quote. This is paragraph 3.32 and 3.33, page 2963 of the Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee. As a result of the above, a number of soil retaining walls had to be constructed at the private residence of the President in Nkandla to hold the soil and substrate against gravitational pull and stormwater. In this context, the soil retention wall also carries an access road on top, which is used by heavy security vehicles for purposes of work within the homestead. Below are the pictures of what is referred to as an amphitheater. The picture on the left is an amphitheater designed for entertainment purposes. The picture on the right is what has been referred to as an amphitheater at the President's residence in Nkandla. The civil engineering reports make reference to both an amphitheater and a soil retention wall. Clearly, the picture on the right does not resemble an entertainment area. The Durban Prestige Project A, Motivations and Cost Allocations Report states that, I quote, due to house and road levels, contours have been designed to control stormwater and help with security and private lines. Landscaping has been introduced to make good after the construction of the new security access road and tunnels and new houses. Close quote. This is from also the RNG consultancy report, page 22, paragraph 5.1.6, dated 11 March 2011. In accordance with the Ibongo Consulting CC Provision of Civil Engineering Services report, dated 17th April 2012, page 4, under the heading Stormwater Drainage, I quote, the development is around the hillock. Stormwater management will be on surface by means of curbs on the road and concrete and grass-lined V-drains flowing into an attenuation pond on site. All butters are to be protected by grassing and the construction of water catch banks, close quote. There are further proposed paving and landscaping designs that take into account the geotechnical requirements. The geotechnical report recommends the construction of various platforms within the homestead. This is page 6 of the Ibongo Consulting CC report. Various types of soil retention walls are constructed at the private residence of the president in Nkandla, varying from straight walls of approximately 3 meters high to sloping dwarf wall terraces. However, the straight walls are deemed as inappropriate as they provide an intruder hideout. The SAPS Security Evaluation Report, page 3 of 8, under the heading Illumination, states, I quote, proposed security illumination must be installed around the resident in such a way as to illuminate on dark areas without illuminating the residence itself, close quote. In terms of the document compiled by RNG Consultancy, page 19, under the heading Landscape, one of the motivations for the landscape at the President's residence in the area around the visitor center and the security control room is, I quote, retaining wall is required due to the level difference and to allow access to the security control room in the lower level. Lighting to step and ramp is introduced for safety and security. The height of the step is 650 centimeters, whereas the horizon platform or width is between 700 centimeters to 1.3 meters. With the illumination on the vertical walls, whereas if it was to be used as an amphitheater, there would have been people seated and obstructing the illumination. It would be unimaginable that people would be seated in an alu garden with irrigation system. This could not be regarded as an amphitheater under the circumstances. The picture that you see in the report, firstly, is the measurement which states that from the ground to the top of the wall, it's 650 centimeters, which is probably 15 centimeters, just above half a meter a measure, while also illustrating the sitting position of a would-be or a potential a person attending an entertainment in the so-called amphitheater. The dwarf stepping soil retention walls are the best in terms of safety and security in that it avoids obscurity of the view of security persons and does not provide hideout for would-be intruders. The dwarf stepping walls are preferred in terms of strength and safety as opposed to steep sloping single soil retention walls that pose danger to persons falling and breaking bones or falling to their death. The pictures below are regarded by landscape experts as the best and sustainable method of soil retention. Again, according to the Soil Retention Methods website, it states that retaining walls prevent soil and substrate from moving because of erosion or gravitational pull. These are also regarded in landscaping terms as dwarf wall sloping terrace. And those pictures are reflected in this report. The stepping up ground retention methods shown above are recommended as the best method, also regarded as stronger than single wall retention. Single retention walls tend to cave in and crack due to geological and stormwater pressure. The R&G engineer's report stated that under the heading Landscaping on page 21 of that report, I quote, retaining walls were required due to the new security access road infrastructure, close quote. The retention wall at the private residence of the president in Nkandla had to be strong and stepping in order to retain ground that carries the main homestead internal road. The positioning of dwarf wall sloping terrace assist in retaining the soil which carries the upper road surface. The upper road is used by heavy-duty vehicles as illustrated below. These include heavy firefighting trucks, armored personnel carrier, the SABC Nyala, armored personnel carrier, and VIP vehicles. The other specific purpose for the amphitheater is that it serves as a primary emergency assembly point. On the emergency assembly area, it is important to note that the homestead dwellers are expected to be able to get to an assembly point as per emergency drills provided for in the SABC Security Evaluation Report, page 7, paragraph 17.5, which states that, I quote, consideration must be given to an awareness program for the families of the president as well as domestic workers, close quote. In case of major security emergencies, security drills and demonstrations by law enforcement officers as well as emergency services will be able to assemble for briefing and debriefing at this particular zone. And below we then show the picture just below the amphitheater in terms of the emergency assembly point and how it is marked out. The homestead is occupied by a number of people as well as the family members of the president. In case of any fire threats, bomb threat or medical emergencies, the occupants of the homestead would assemble at this particular area referred to as the amphitheater. This area has appropriate signage and thus provides illumination linked to the electrical mains as well as the backup generators. The linkage of this area to the backup generator is in line with the SABC Security Evaluation Report, page 7 of 8, which states that, quote unquote, the proposed new generator must be able to supply enough power to cater for both domestic and security needs within the premises. The existence of the assembly area complies with the occupational health and safety regulations, which requires that any dwelling occupied or used for office or accommodation by a number of people should have such an area in order to take stock of the occupants and their conditions during an emergency.
This is a typical house with an amphitheater that is used as a social node for entertainment. Theater goers are able to sit comfortably facing the stage. The stage is positioned such that it is visible to all seated and has electrical power connections with the possibility of erecting a canopy. This is the area within the homestead of the president in Nkandla, which serves three purposes. The open paved area is an assembly point for security emergencies, where all persons within the homestead should gather in the event of fire or medical emergencies. all homesteads with a number of people should have emergency assembly points. It is also in this area where security forces gathers for briefing and debriefing during security emergencies. The third utilization is soil retention that is meant to strengthen the security road surface above, while ensuring the resistance from geological pool and soil erosion due to stormwater, with green flashers or red flasher units linked to battery backup that points the homestead dwellers to the emergency assembly point in emergencies and during power failure.
Thank you. We now come to the area of observations as we make them arising out of this research and analytical work that we had to do. Whilst the pursuit of a just and corruption-free society is noble, the pursuit should be conducted in an objective and fair manner so that its very intent is not undermined. The President is as much of a South African citizen as every other citizen and therefore entitled to the rights that every citizen enjoys. The rights that are enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, as we adopted it in 1996, as well as the Bill of Rights. Amongst the fundamental rights are the right to privacy and the right to dignity. It is evident from the reports that most of the structures and/or task teams that investigated the security upgrades did not share a common definition of what constitutes security features and its relevance. For example, the SIU dismisses the accommodation of the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence Force as non-security features. This is according to their report on page 215. It is also evident from the available information that the project management process was not properly structured and coordinated. Communication within the project team was also poor, including communication between security and non-security personnel, as a result of which monitoring of implementation of the project was not effective. Of course, on this subject matter, ladies and gentlemen, Minister Nhleko will also address us in terms of the measures taken. The SAPS Security Evaluation Report, in which some of these features are requested or implied, is proper, well done, and relevant. However, security advisors could have been explicit and more detailed would have assisted non-security persons. The fifth observation is that the manner in which this matter has been handled in former investigations has sought to question the credibility and integrity of professionals and experts in their relevant fields. There is an implied presumption of impropriety in the public protector's finding pertaining to an articulation which states, quote unquote, measures implemented in the name of security which include non-security comforts. And this is page 431, paragraph 10.5.3 of the Public Protector's Report 2014. The above articulation amplifies a sense of suggested impropriety on the part of the security experts who conducted the initial and ongoing security evaluation at the private residence of His Excellency, the President. The extent of the investigations, as well as the intrusion into the private residence of the President, has resulted in a violation of his rights. His family has concomitantly suffered the violation and breach of their security and safety. It is an unprecedented phenomenon the world over that a president's security and privacy is violated to the degree that we have witnessed in South Africa. We then come to the area of findings and recommendations. With regards to the fire pool and or swimming pool, The security and fire practitioners found that, one, that it has been established that the firefighting capability at the residence of the President in Nkandla is not up to the required standards as per the national fire regulations. This is caused by, among others, the low water pressure from the main water supply, as well as insufficient and/or inadequate firefighting equipment. 2. The fire hydrant static pressure yields 2.5 bars, which is very poor and inadequate, thus insufficient for firefighting. The pressure was found not to be enough to supply the inlet of the portable fire pump. 3. The inspection of the hose rails showed that only 2 hose rails out of 10 are connected to the water reticulation system. All the other hose rails did not have water. Some hose rails are wrongly positioned and exposed to extreme weather conditions. Some hose rail drums were found missing, and others appeared to have been damaged by corrosion. 4. The swimming pool, an open water source, connected to the suction pump and linked to water pressure monitors, to be made available on site at the private residence of the President in Nkandla, is known to be the best firefighting water source, and as such, the most important security feature. The 5th point, it has been established through scientific and practical demonstrations that the best water source that is available on site at Nkandla is the pool to replenish the fire engine. The pool is equally to be used in an event the fire breaks out, by deploying the suction pump, linking it to monitors through the fire hoses in order to extinguish fire while the truck is on its way. The portable fire pump, capable of discharging 1,600 liters per minute, is supplied with sufficient water from the reliable source, such as a fire hydrant with at least 500 kPa. The pump was able to adequately supply 2 ground monitors through separate lines of 64 millimeter diameter fire hoses and could reach a distance of approximately 80 meters without straining the pump. And the quality of throw was extremely good. A suction hose diameter of 100 millimeters was used for this test. In this regard, the conclusion is arrived at that 8 hose reels need to be connected to the water reticulation system. More hose reels need to be installed in order to improve firefighting ability. Additional fire hydrants need to be added. A booster pump must be installed in the fire hydrant line in order to increase the pressure to at least 500 kPa. With regards to the new animal enclosure with culvert and chicken run, the security reports and analysis established that, 1, the relocation and subsequent confinement of livestock was the necessary security arrangement given the introduction of the MDB and PIDS technology. 2, the new animal enclosure with culvert and chicken run complements, enhances, and ensures the effectiveness of the perimeter security infrastructure. 3, the effective and efficient use of the fence technology would be enhanced by avoiding foreseeable false alarms, as well as resultant underutilization of the technology. 4, the effective and optimal utilization of the fence technology is in compliance with the Public Finance Management Act, number 1 of 1999, as amended by Act 29 of 1999. And the particular section of the PFMA refers to the optimal, effective, efficient, and economical utilization of state resources. The new animal enclosure with culvert and chicken run complements the entire homestead security and as such a critical security component and feature. With regards to the visitor center, the security evaluation reports establishes that, 1, the feature is strategic as well as crucial for ensuring physical and information security of the President's meetings and engagements. 2, the President remains the head of state even whilst on leave at home or at home. Meetings referred to may vary from one-on-one, the tete-a-tete, to delegations, as well as interactions with local constituencies. All the above mentioned meetings require facilitation by protocol officers as well as security officials from visiting heads of states and/or delegations. The Visitor Center at Nkandla is strategically positioned such that it allows for the necessary security separation from private activities within family dwellings and the President's official and public engagements at such a facility. 4, the Visitor Center constitutes the most vital security feature and needs to be completed to the appropriate executive standard as soon as possible. With regards to the amphitheater, reports analysis have established that there was a clear security purpose for its construction, namely that it serves as an emergency assembly point for family and homestead dwellers. Secondly, that it is used for briefing and debriefing purposes by law enforcement and emergency service officers. Thirdly, that it is retaining soil and substrate for the soil bank carrying the inner security road utilized by heavy security and emergency vehicles. Further, it has been asserted that stepping soil retention methods enhances safety and improves security, provides a clear vision of the yard, eliminates an intruder hideout, mitigates against dangers of people falling and maiming, provides an unrestricted access to the assembly area. Lastly, that it reinforces strength of the upper security road carrying emergency and security vehicles, including the VIP armored cars. Conclusion. As the Minister assigned to make a determination on the security upgrades of the President's homestead at Nkandla and having paid due consideration to the facts given above, evidence points to the questionable features, namely the animal enclosure, in other words, the cattle kraal and/or goat kraal with culvert and chicken run, the fire pool referred to as the swimming pool, the soil retention wall referred to as the amphitheater, and visitor center as being security features which are in accordance with the physical security requirements and/or interests. And having considered the strategic importance of the homestead, national security interests, relevant legislation, scientific and graphical demonstration, arriving at the following carefully considered decision is inescapable that 1, the fire pool and swimming pool is a strategic asset useful for fire fighting and therefore is a security feature. The animal enclosure, which is made of chicken run, kraal and culvert, keeps livestock away from the security infrastructure, and therefore these features complements the PIDS security fence, the MDB technology, and our security imperatives for fence technology to work, and as such, it is a security feature. Thirdly, the soil retention wall and/or amphitheater have a clear security purpose as an emergency assembly point for the family and homestead dwellers. Soil retaining wall is critical in holding soil and substrate, thereby reinforcing the soil bank carrying the inner road surface. This area is therefore a necessary security feature. The visitor center has to cater for, that's the fourth point, visitor center has to cater for the President's distinguished guests meetings and local constituency meetings. During such meetings, privacy and confidentiality is necessary. There are protocol, physical, and information security imperatives that should be observed in hosting such meetings. Therefore, the visitor center is in this regard a security feature. Accordingly, the state president is therefore not liable to pay for any of these security features. The outstanding security-related work at Nkandla should be funded and completed expeditiously, including the re-evaluation of the current physical security measures In this instance, the laws and prescripts are to be followed to the letter. Both the SIU and the Parliamentary Committee reports alluded to the urgent need for a new security evaluation to be conducted at the President's residence in Nkandla. And this report is submitted and has been tabled for consideration by Parliament. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would now allow the Minister of Public Works to then take us through the elements that affect the Department of Public Works and the work that they have undertaken in regard to the areas that were pointed out. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister Nhleko. Some, if not most, of the issues relating to the implementation of the recommendations of the different reports for public works have already been reported to, but we just want to emphasize for those who might have missed them. The Minister of Police has already referred to the 3 official investigations: the Ministerial Task Team, the Public Protector's Report, the Special Investigation Unit. And the Minister has also stated that the recommendation arising from all these 3 reports are similar in many respects or complement one another, and substantially implemented this by the department. On systemic recommendations, during my budget vote speech, I also indicated that I'm pleased to note that the Public Protector and the SIU have both pronounced to their satisfaction to the response of the Department of Public Works in implementing the recommendations from their reports, particularly the tightening the internal controls and relevant procedures pertaining to the supply chain management and the management of the infrastructure delivery. The issue of the disciplinary actions which has taken place, the various steps against the officials were identified in the different reports. We did indicate that disciplinary proceedings are underway against 12 public officials for misconduct arising from their failure to comply with the SCM processes which were related to the security upgrade. And we said one of those matters has been finalized, where the official concerned who played a minor role in the project pleaded guilty and was issued with a final written warning amongst a range of the sanctions, which include suspension without pay, corrective training in the SCM processes, and a ban from participating in the SCM functions in future. We are ready to proceed with the remaining 11 matters affecting those 11 officials, and we await the conclusion of the High Court proceedings. And we want to emphasize here, High Court proceedings which were brought by the media, who have requested access to the disciplinary proceedings. And these are internal disciplinary proceedings of the department, but media has requested access to that. Then as a department, we'll remain neutral in this regard, and we're awaiting the ruling of the courts. That's why those disciplinary cases are not continuing, or they are stalling. The issue of the criminal cases, We have indicated that evidence has also been handed to the prosecuting authorities contained in the criminal dockets in respect of 3 former senior department officials and 1 contractor, with a recommendation that they be prosecuted for contravening Section 87 of the PFMA. And the department has also referred the possible fraudulent or invalid tax clearance certificates of 14 consultants and contractors who carried out the security upgrade to SARS for further investigation and also prosecution. On civil action and recovery of the public funds, the SIU instituted the civil claim in which an amount of 155 million, 324,516 rands, 49 cents is being claimed from the architect. That is Makanya, being the damages or losses he has caused to the department to suffer as a result of the management of the security upgrade. And that matter is in court. Other measures. The department has instituted a number of control measures proposed by the 3 investigations to ensure that the security upgrades and infrastructure delivery in general is carried out in an economical and cost-effective manner, that we effectively manage the work of the external consultants and comply with the relevant norms and prescripts. And I just want to emphasize one issue. What we have done as part of these measures is to resuscitate the joint interdepartmental committee that looks at these matters and recommends to the various accounting officers so that things like overpricing and scope creeps are not or are eliminated. And strict security clearance is part of that risk management of all these tenders. But what we've also done is that the delegations to the regions have been withdrawn in order to ensure that only the accounting officers in the National Department considers these matters carefully, look into the SCM procedures, which we continue to improve, not just in relation to this particular project, in relation to all the projects of public works. Those are the measures which we have implemented as public works, which are arising out of these reports. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take the questions now. We do have a limited time, so it's not going to be on and on. I'll start with Marina, Lukanya, and Kivit. I'll take the first 4 now. I'll take those first 4 now. Thank you.
Marina Lamprecht from Media 24 newspapers. Minister, your finding that the president is not liable to pay is contradicting the public protector's finding on this matter very strongly. The public protector's right or duty to investigate and make findings and recommendations is granted and protected by the Constitution. Minister, can you tell us by what power or by which law or legislation did you make your finding? And then secondly, have you determined how much it will cost to complete all these recommended security features that has not been completed yet? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just 2 questions from me. So if you now saying that, the president isn't liable to pay for any of the security features, why are there prosecutions as well as civil claims against some of the architects that were involved in the Nkandla project. I mean, if there were legitimate security features, why are there these prosecutions and claims against the architects? And then just the second one, sir, the fire pool. We know that there hasn't been a fire at Nkandla yet. Can you then at least tell us whether or not there have been children that have been allowed in the swimming pool? Because it was to serve two purposes. So if there's no fire, then there's the recreational aspect comes in. Do we know if children from the village have been allowed to go in and use the swimming pool for its other purpose? Thanks very much.
John Webb from Carte Blanche. Minister, were any changes made to this report between now and when it was completed on the 30th of March? And if not, then why the delay?
Minister, Lest from ENCA, you were effectively asked to conduct a report on the president at whose whim you serve. How comfortable would you feel for there's already been 4 reports into the Nkandla issue, all done by bodies that serve at the whim of the president. How would you feel for an independent, completely independent, outside of government investigation into this issue? It's now been covered by the SIU, the Public Protector, and by your office. How would you feel for an independent inquiry?
No, thank you very much. You will realize that in the presentation of this report, we have had to trace the specific aspects that were questionable, for an example, arising of the Public Protector's report. In other words, for an example, how come we have a fire pool? How come we have an amphitheater? What exactly informed the existence and construction of this? Now, and where we start off is to then say, first and foremost, you have a standing government policy around the question of the protection of VIPs, presidents, deputies, former presidents, and deputies, and so forth. That's the starting point. Second one is that you then have the South African Police Service and other security agencies, for instance, that need to be activated to conduct an evaluation. So when we keep on referring to evaluation reports, we're not talking about the evaluation reports that were conducted this week or yesterday or last month and so forth. We're talking about what was initially done right from the beginning, that essentially then informed the creation and the subsequent sort of construction, design and subsequent construction of the items in question. So that's all there is to it. Now, you will recall that the finding by the Public Protector says these are non-security comforts. Now, you need to establish that first. You need to establish that first and foremost. Are they non-security? Are they security issues? So eventually in the tracing and the kind of research and analysis that we have had to do, it takes us back to how these particular issues originated, informed by security thinking and security experts in terms of analysis and so forth. Now, so I agree that a contradiction does arise, but all that I'm saying is that for me to arrive at this particular conclusion, it has nothing to do whether any other person or any other agency arrived at a particular position. Because my duty in this regard was not about them as agencies or any other, but it was about the issues in dispute and what informed these issues in dispute to be in existence and so on. So that has been the starting point, and that's the end point. Now, I think on the question that I suspect it's Mr. Nkandla, is it? I think so. Yeah. On the question of why then do you have prosecutions of architects and so on. Now, in the beginning, when I started this report, in fact, this is the point that we're also making in this report, that this report is limited. It does not deal with the whole range of other issues that are raised in the public protector's report, for an example. It does not deal with compliance or non-compliance with regards to SCM issues. It does not deal with any other. It focuses strictly around the 4 areas, and that's the amphitheater, the cattle kraal, chicken run, and goats. The third area is, did I say amphitheater? Yes, I did. The visitor center. Then the 4th area is, of course, the question of the pool and so forth. Now, interestingly, when we found out that in the security evaluation reports, the original ones, and even in the reports, there was this consistent reference to firefighting capability and whatever and so forth. What we then had to do was to then say, no, but let's see this thing in practice. How does it work? Because there's something else to read something in a report, but it's something else to talk to an expert and a practitioner in the field and in a specific area of this thing. So then it's demonstrated as it has been demonstrated, to then say this is how this thing works and this is how it differs, for an example, from the usage of a fire hydrant and all sorts of equations that were spoken to. We then asked the same experts whether this is what they can back up, for an example. So in this regard, they also compiled and filed reports with us to then say, no, indeed, this is how these things are designed to work. Now, the one area that we have pointed out, for an example, is the question of project management and project coordination in the execution of the overall project. Now, which is, in a sense, some of the issues that Minister Nkandla is also dealing with. What do you do with issues where you have a legitimate item identified from a security analysis and evaluation, but in its execution, for an example, you probably have got an inflated sort of pricing around that. No? And that's what his section of this report deals with, insofar as a matter of that particular nature. And that's, you may discover that probably that's where the issue of prosecutions and recoveries also does come into when it comes to that. I'm not aware whether children have been allowed into the pool. I really wouldn't know. All I was interested in, why do you have a fire pool? How does it work, and how does it differ from using a hydrant and so on? What informed its existence and so on? That's the thing. Mr. John Webb, a very interesting question. Have there been changes to the report, and why the delay? Firstly, I think that's a valid question. It's quite a valid question. Look, the report was completed. The report itself was completed by the 18th of March. And we subsequently asked for a date. And we proposed the date of the 25th of March. So they said, look, we would like to present the report before Parliament. You may be aware that there have been engagements by political parties even during that time in terms of, what format should it take and so on. That's not for me to decide. That was for Parliament to then decide. And subsequently, some weeks later, they arrived at a conclusion that I'm told that the ad hoc committee has got to be set up to process this. Okay, so that processing, from a parliamentary point of view, still has got to happen. Were there changes? No, there were no changes, precisely because we were concluded. Then there is I want to call him ENCA. I know that's not fair because I just have forgotten your name. My apologies, sir, for that. Would I be amenable? I think that's your question. Would I be amenable to an independent inquiry? Now, there are two things about that. There's the general, there's the specific. But let me start with the specific. The specific, when you arrive at that point, you must also arrive first and foremost at the conclusion that what has been done is not independent. Okay, and why is it not independent? In other words, what are the falling points and weaknesses in the work that has been done? And the difficulty that you'll probably find, I'm just probably just expanding on the point. The difficulty that you probably find is that when you deal with these particular issues, you've got to go back to what happened in 2009, what happened in 2011, who said what, and so on and so on. So you must also, if you question the independence of this thing, you must also question the independence of that very same work that was done. Now, state security agencies are the only agencies in the country that we have that are competent to conduct security evaluations. Okay. So that's one on the specific. But if you were to ask me a general point and say what is my general attitude, I would say to you, this is one report that I do not have a problem with it. I mean, if it has got to be scrutinized, let it be scrutinized. If there are better, what should I say? Better people or something who can do it, I also don't mind. They can that can be done. I really don't have a problem with that. But also let me qualify that. Having said so, this is just me at a personal level, but then the decision is not mine whether I can invite a so-called independent person to do this and do an evaluation and so on. But I'm saying this product, it's open to scrutiny of any sorts, really. And of course, I think through the parliamentary process, that also will also be subjected to. No, this very same report will also be subjected to a similar kind of scrutiny and so on. I don't know. I don't know, Minister of Public Works. You may want to come in around the question of prosecutions and the other issues that you raised in your report.
Shortly. Various reports made a number of findings and recommendations in relation to the violations of the various regulations, the various codes, the various prescripts, and pointed to those who were managing. Therefore, those who were managing and even said we need to further investigate and, if necessary, charge those who are responsible. We're doing exactly that. Those who were implementing or project managing that particular big project must answer a number of questions. We're doing exactly that. And I want to emphasize that it's not just junior officials, as some have indicated. DGs and DDGs of the time have been called to come and answer. The private sector who were overpricing because some of the prices are so glaring. In fact, that's what you are feasting on as the media, on the glaring prices. And those private companies must also come and respond on these prices. So, because those are the issues which we're dealing with. So they have to answer on those issues, because we long indicated that not everything was done according to the prescripts. So we have to follow each and every person who was involved in the project. Thank you.
I'll take Marianne and next, and you. I'm sorry,
Musa. Hi, Musa.
Yebo.
No, we have some questions in Pretoria as well.
Yes, I'll come to Pretoria after this round.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Marianne Merton, Independent Newspapers. It's a process question. You seem to indicate that the public protector made some negative insinuations about the president. Clarify that, whether that is your criticism of the Chapter 9 institution or whether I'm over-interpreting that, given that you said that the president and his family was the only victim in this saga, given the kind of high levels of scrutiny that he found himself under. You've made a determination now. The president doesn't have to pay back anything. The public protector found differently a year and a couple of months ago. Is the next step now, in accordance to our legal and constitutional framework, that either you or the presidency will take the public protector report on review? On a political strategy issue, do you really think that this kind of a report will settle once and for all the public outcry and controversies and talk show rebates and everything that have bedeviled the president and his administration for the past 3-4 years? Do you think that you can sell this to the South African public, or do you just really think South African citizens are just so stupid? Thank you.
Okay, Joseph Musia, SABC. Minister, on the issue of the mandate under which you started this, you undertook this process. My understanding is that it emanates from the findings of the public protector that you, as the Minister of Police, has to determine why did you then change that mandate from determining to actually determining whether there is? My understanding is that it was not whether, it was how much the president needs to pay. But by what power did you decide then to change that mandate to actually undertake another investigation and actually find out that the president does not have to pay anything? And on the issue of the visitor center, my understanding of your justification or your explanation of it is that the president, even when he's not at work, still is the president and he takes visitors. How do we account for the fact that there are at least three residences provided at state expense for the president to conduct official business? That you can, at the state expense, justify building several million worth visitor center at his private home when no other, in my understanding, president has such privileges. Thank you very much.
Janet Hurd, Media 24. A question and 2 quick points of clarity. The question, if you look on page 11 of your own report, it actually mentions that it isn't just the public protector who felt that there should be money paid back. It also talks about the public works document of an amount of 10 million reduced to 3 million. Can you just clarify that? Was that ever paid? What happened to that? Is that part of the same thing? Because that seems to be in support of Thuli Madonsela's findings. The point of a clarity, we get one thing from Parliament and one thing from the Executive. It was very clear from Parliament that what was holding up the process was that there needed to be some kind of consultations through Cyril Ramaphosa in terms of parliamentary business. And that your report was ready, but that there was something else, some kind of thing to do with Treasury, or etc. That doesn't seem to be what you are saying. If you could just clarify that. And then also, was your report in consultation with Treasury? Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yanyan Uber, Sunday Times, through you to the Minister of Police. Firstly, I would just like to...
I think I should begin to respond to some of these things because the list is getting too long, and I think these are involved questions. I think I want to... Now, Let me start with the question whether I'm making insinuations. I am not making insinuations. There's a specific finding. The specific finding says the measures implemented were implemented in the name of security. But they were implemented in the name of security, the long and short of it, in order to derive non-security comforts, right? And all I'm saying is that given that this work of determining security and security standards and measures that have got to be implemented is work that is never done by anybody else except professionals, trained people to do security evaluations. And therefore, in there is suggestion of impropriety and so on. It's like me saying here, for an example, if I may just make an example about this point. You're asking me this question in the name of journalism. What you have just asked now. You're asking me this question in the name of journalism, not by the mere fact that you want to be clarified and so on, because there's something that requires clarity and so on. When I say that, you must know that I'm beginning to essentially question your professional standing as well, because you're a professional as a journalist. So I'm just saying that, and I'm saying there is that. And it's an important point, because arising out of that, you can actually pursue, indeed, if there was wrongdoing. In other words, all I'm saying is that, indeed, if there was wrongdoing on the side of security practitioners and whomever else, they must then be taken to task and, of course, account for such. If they did things in the name of security with a view to derive non-security comforts. Now, the process is quite clear. The process is quite clear. The process is that the Minister of Police has already tabled the report with Parliament, and this report has been circulated, and tonight this report, I'm told the report has already been circulated by Parliament to various interested groups. But also I'm told that Parliament will also be publishing it in the announcement, tabling, and committees kind of publication, which then has got to appear tomorrow. My suspicion is that once it appears on the ATC, then it will essentially be a fully fledged sort of parliamentary process from that point onwards. Now, and perhaps Mr. Webb, you said you are Mr. Webb. It does also respond to your question about what then is the delay. For instance, we tabled the report yesterday, and then there was a programming committee meeting this morning, and an announcement was made to then say, no, this is what has been tabled. And of course, the process that I've just explained now is what was also announced this morning: distribution of the report to political parties, and of course publishing it through the ATC mechanism in Parliament. South African people are not stupid. Yeah, they are simply not stupid. All what this report and its presentation does is to then say there are issues that have been questioned and issues that have been in dispute. Then the question is, how come we have those issues, firstly in dispute, and how come, even if they are not in dispute, how do they come about, they themselves? Now, so if you read through the report, you will then trace the actual steps over the years in terms of, okay, how did the issue of the relocation of a crawl, for an example, and the building of another one, how did we come about that situation and so on. That's what this situation talks about. And I think this point flips then onto the point by Mr. Masia, where you seem to allege that I've changed the mandate. Because there's no mandate that have been changed. The question is that you can't, the question of determining a quantum, for an example, in other words, the amount of money, must be informed by what the actual finding is. So the finding says that these are non-security issues that were identified. So before you even determine the quantum, you must then say, are they security or not a security, for an example? And out of that, you then determine liability. But out of liability, you then, of course, need to work out the quantum in terms of is it how much that you need to pay in relation to an improper benefit, for an example. But for me, the public protector's recommendation is very clear. There's improper benefit arising out of measures implemented in the name of security to derive non-security comforts. So it's very clear that if you to do any determination, you then have got to operate within this particular frame of a finding by the public protector. The issue that you're raising about the visitors center and the three other whatever, I would hope that in the question that you're raising, you are not necessarily suggesting that the president is only a president when he's at Mahlambanlovu or JL Dube House or Makhato Guest House in Pretoria, because the responsibility of being a president and leadership responsibility, generally speaking, occurs anywhere he is. Okay, now, and that's the point that we're making in the report, which I think you would also, when going through it, that there is a political obligatory kind of matters also in relation to the president, as well as the question of other duties in relation to him in his capacity as the president, for an example. So we also highlight that particular point, and it's in the context of that. But also you'll note that in the same report that we have just tabled here and brought before you, is that the same visitor center is on top of the SAPS control room. So below the visitor center is the SAPS control room, right there. So that tells you in terms of what was the original thinking, particularly derived out of the original SAPS security evaluation reports and so on. You wouldn't build your house on top of a police station. Certainly, that's if you do so, it's because there would have been some security consideration why you need to have a police station below your house. I suspect so. I'm not sure about, ma'am, I'm sorry again, I forgot your name. I'm Janet. I like that name. Janet. Yeah. My next daughter is going to be Janet. Sorry. Now, I'm sorry, I'm just being silly. But I'm not sure what you are referring to, for an example. When you refer to what the executive says and what Parliament says, all I can say to you is that these are two distinct arms of government. So if the executive, for instance, deals with an issue and processes it in a particular manner, it doesn't mean that Parliament must also follow suit and so forth. Because, I think we need to be able to draw the distinction between the two. All I know is that, for an example, there is a process that needed to take place at cabinet level, but also that process needed to flow over onto to Parliament. and of which that process was about tabling of this report, and it has been accordingly tabled, which now makes it a public report in a sense that it has now been officially tabled. The other processes are for Parliament as an institution to decide, for instance, as to how it wants to process the report further, which is then a discussion that would have to take place amongst parties and between parties and them as parties in the context of their participation in various institutional structures of Parliament and so on. The point that we're making on page 11, is it page 11 that you said, or 10? I think page 11. All we're saying is that, yes, we're capturing this thing, saying, there was this amount of 10 million rands, but there was no explanation logically for it as to why it was there. And, it subsequently went down to 3 million rands, still no explanation and no logical explanation as to how that figure was arrived at. And so it goes. But Minister Nhleko here will also respond to that question. Thank you.
The 10 million down to 3 million, if the colleague had read all the reports, you would find that the issue was there. In fact, this was a submission by a former regional manager who purportedly prepared a report to Minister Nkandla at the time. But this letter, which was making reference about, was unsigned, and the then minister had never seen it, nor it was even sent to the president. It was just, the minister was just making a reference to that particular letter. And what we call the authenticity of that letter in the various reports was questionable, and no one at the end owned up to it or could even explain that particular. That's why it was thrown out. And I think some of the various reports are there. But I must just also appeal, colleagues, as we deal with the questions, let's deal with the questions in the report and just put some judgment aside. I don't want to say some of the questions or one of the questions might be disrespectful of the process. Let's just ask the questions. But I would not respond to that. Thank you.
I'll take Yan and then go to Pretoria.
Thank you, sir, for your kindness. Jan Nhleko for the Sunday Times. Sir, Minister of Police, you, as Lester said, you serve in Cabinet at the complete prerogative of the President. It's one of the only complete prerogatives in our legislation. Did you feel conflicted at all having to make these judgments? Did you discuss it with him at any point when you met, perhaps in Cabinet or anywhere? And do you think it's apt that you have to make these calls about someone upon whom your very appointment rests?
Pretoria.
Good afternoon, Minister. Karen Labuskaghni from Power FM. Minister, you found that the extent of the investigations and the intrusion into the President's house has resulted in a violation of his rights. Now, this is a very serious statement. I don't know whether you heard the first part of my question, Minister.
I did, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can I just continue? Thank you, Minister. This is a very serious statement to make and a violation against a citizen of the state, which was not much elaborated on in the report. So perhaps just for more clarity, would you recommend that the President should pursue this through the judiciary? And also, have you identified any of these rights that have been violated? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. My name is Given Mohoema, and I'm a journalist with the Political News. Mr. Nhleko, if I'm not mistaken, Public Protector's report alleged President family members may have benefited from Nkandla security upgrades. I would like to hear from your findings. I would like to hear your findings in this regard and your conclusions. If any family members found to have benefited, who are they by names and how much in rents they've benefited? If so, will they be liable to pay the money back or be criminally liable? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Selby. Minister, thank you very much for the interactive video. It was very pleasant to put an image to what we've been hearing and talking about. But I want to know, why was the access to those areas not given it to the public protector as well when she complained that it took 9 months for her to get a response? And also, Minister Nhleko, when the interministerial task team was pressed to explain the fire pool in the tabling last year, you said that the process would be they'd be using buckets to transport the water in case there was a fire. What has then changed now that we now have the pump system sucking the water out of the pool? And my final question, last year, ANC Secretary General Mr. Mantashe complained about the use of the word fire pool. Why are you now using the word fire pool and not a water retaining dam being used for firefighting? Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Maybe let me start with the so that I don't ever forget your name. Mr. Lester, I suspect you are Williams, isn't it?
Lester, keep it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Williams, I don't know, I'm not sure whether I said something wrong, but yeah. On this question about the access, I'm unable, for instance, I do not know what happened at the time and how the public protector's investigation was conducted and so on. You would also appreciate that's an institution by itself on its own, and so I would not know. I mean, what is it that was considered, for instance, in dealing with the specific matters that led to the conclusions that we are also now dealing with, amongst other things. So that's a difficult question for me to answer. Oh, yeah. Minister Nhleko says he will answer that question. Am I conflicted? You're saying yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, you were asking. Yeah, I don't feel conflicted at all. My approach to issues of this nature and issues of governance in general is that issues of governance do not work on the basis of whether I like you or I don't like you. There are policies, there is law, and that's what we have got to stick to. But we should also, at all material times, be governed by principle. In this instance, for me, the major preoccupation was, what is the actual truth about these things? How did these things come about? What informed them, and so forth. So the question of I serve of the pleasure of the president and so forth, for me, doesn't arise. It doesn't actually arise, and it doesn't apply insofar as I'm concerned. In other words, it's possible that if one was conducting this thing and doing all the sort of analysis, because you walk on these particular steps, and these steps would have to lead you to a concluding point to then say, no, but this is what the situation has got to be. Certainly, one would have had to pronounce also on such matters. So, and the problem that were likely to face generally South Africans was, I've had this point even at the time when the matter was referred to the Minister of Police, even before I began work on this thing. Oh yeah, how can he ask a person who serves under him and he reports to him and so on to do this kind of thing? Is The problem is that we are falling into a trap of a personality cult when it comes to issues of governance. And if we continue with that, I think we'll be weakening our democracy, in a sense, and all the efforts that we're making to create a humane society, for an example. The fact of the matter is, if there are issues before us, let's deal with the issues as they are, but be objective in how we deal with those particular matters and how we arrive at particular conclusions and so forth. So if you were to ask me as to what is then my authority in arriving at this conclusion, I'm able to point out all the steps that I've taken in processing the matter, whether you agree with those steps or you don't, but I'm able to point you out, this is where I had to step over and stepped there and stepped there and so forth. You can trace it. For me, that's the important part. Now, I think in Pretoria there was the question about the family benefit or whether any of the family members, for instance, benefited and so forth. What I was trying to say and what I said in the report was this report is limited to 4 areas that were identified by the public protector. The one area was there was an improper benefit by the president in regard to the cattle crawl with Culvert and the chicken run. It's difficult to call it, a cattle crawl with Culvert and the chicken run. There was a benefit with regards to the erection or the construction of the amphitheater. There was a benefit in regard to the swimming pool. There was the 4th area, I think, is the visitor center. Now, those were the 4 distinct areas, and within which the public protector referred to them as being non-security comforts, for an example. So, and that's what I've had to. So, in other words, I've also qualified it in the report that this report does not deal with the whole range of other issues that the public protector dealt with, because we're not going back over there and so forth. So it's limited to that. So in the work that we have had to do, clearly we've established that there is a security function and security purpose for the items that were identified. And therefore they fall within the context of security evaluation and security assessments that were conducted prior to their erection, design and construction by the South African Police Service and other law enforcement agencies and so on. So that's the one part. There was the issue about intrusion and violation of the president's rights. I think that was the question by the lady in Pretoria. Now, all that we're saying is that every one of us here have got rights under the current dispensation and system of our constitution. You know, your individual rights, your right to privacy and whatever and so forth. So we have that. And all that we're then saying is that there has been an element of intrusion into the privacy, for instance, of the president's living circumstance, if I may put it that way. Now, insofar as his residence is concerned, but also from a security point of view, many of you now here know, for an example, that there's something called PTZ and how it works. Many of you now know many other security gadgets that are deployed around the homestead and other considerations and so forth. And it is for that reason that, amongst other things, that not only this report that we're presenting today, but other reports to have pointed out that there is a need to conduct a re-evaluation of the security situation around certainly the Parliament's report by the ad hoc committee also referred to the same thing, that there is a need to actually conduct a re-evaluation of the security sort of detail and situation pertaining to the president's a private residence in Nkandla. So that's what that's what we captured in the report, ma'am. Minister Nhleko.
My understanding is that the public protector did pay a visit to Nkandla. That's my understanding, accompanied by the Minister of Defense. Maybe that must be verified with the public protector. Secondly, the issue of the buckets you're talking about, that was an issue which came from the Commissioner of Police when he was demonstrating that if you have this open water resource, you could be able to do all sorts of things. It was not just about it would be used just for buckets. I thought that was clearly explained. Thank you.
I'll start with Andy and then Charles and Marina. Will you just ask one more question, not 10 more, please? Thank you.
Okay, Alice Makina from City Press. Two very short questions. Minister Nhleko, when you told the president about your findings, what was his response? And secondly, as somebody who's, I don't know if you've been to the Nkandla homestead, but as someone who's worked on that project over the past few months, would you characterize that homestead as just a house? What would you say to someone who refers to it as just a house?
Charles Duplessis from Media 24. My question relates to the Minister's comments about the public protector not being a security expert. The public protector is an advocate, which would ostensibly mean she's not an expert on agriculture, she's not an expert on energy, she's not an expert on local government, she's not an expert on fisheries. She is really not an expert on any of the government institutions at all that she could ostensibly be asked to investigate. So, I mean, if we're saying now that on this basis we can reject her findings in terms of this report, are you not saying that it's open to government ministers or other functionaries to reject any of her findings on anything on a similar basis? And if so, why do we actually have a public protector? Is it not an issue then of just a waste of money? Thank you.
Minister, just my earlier question wasn't answered. I asked by the power of which law or legislation did you make your findings? So what makes your finding legally binding? Thank you.
Oh, this side. Sorry. Yeah, indeed, I forgot your question, and I certainly do not know what you mean by it. I think it sounds, a very complicated, educated question and so on. Except that the reason why the Minister of Police had to do this work is because a supreme institution of governance in South Africa called Parliament adopted a resolution and said, amongst others, in that resolution, that the Minister of Police also needed to look into some of these particular issues and so on. Now, and that's by resolution adopted by Parliament. So it's not the Minister of Police who just woke up one day and decided that he wanted to do this kind of work. It's because the Minister of Police was subsequently directed by a resolution of Parliament. Now, when I said it's a somewhat of a complicated question for me, it's because I do not also understand what is meant by legally binding. What maybe you want to explain it.
Yes, Minister, what I mean is the public protector's findings were found by court not to be legally binding. And the President also said in Parliament afterwards her findings are just recommendations. So it seems like you are having the final word and this is the final report. That's the way it seems to me. So why is your report more legally binding than that of the public protector? Or what powers do you have legislatively to make these findings?
You are getting it wrong. You're getting it absolutely wrong. Precisely because I did not say that. By the way, this very same report must be subjected to discussion and scrutiny by Parliament. The very same report. Then they will, I suppose and I suspect, that they will then eventually sort of adopt a position in relation to the report once the report would have been fully considered, processed, and everything else and so forth. But also the report is not necessarily positioned in relation to other reports. All it says is that these are the matters that have been asked to look at, but what is it that happened and what is it that transpired, for instance, in relation to the 4 specified sort of areas in dispute. That's all there is. Now, you'll appreciate that the Public Protector's report is not about the 4 things. It's about the whole range of the issues of the Prestige project, for an example. And then it made a series of findings, amongst which then it highlighted the 4. The cattle kraal, the amphitheater, the visitor center, the swimming pool, for an example. Now, and then there's a specific sort of finding in relation to that, and thereafter processing by Parliament, and the Minister of Police was then directed by such resolutions to then look into this Parliament, and that's what this report is about, and not about the whole public protector's report. Now, there was the question about, did I say that the public protector is not a security expert? And were you here when I started? Is that what I said?
Yes, well, that was certainly the impression I got from you.
No, an impression is not what is said.
Okay, well, why don't you...
Yeah, what I said. No, let's clarify this thing. An impression is something else, because it's what you make up in your head. What you hear is what you hear. Now, what I said in the report were quotations from what other reports said. In this report, I do not say that the public protector is not a security expert. I say this is what was said by somebody else in regard to that very same question. Okay? Now, for instance, the Minister of Police here is not a security expert, for an example. But when it comes to these questions, you can't help it and do it any other way except to enroll expertise. You know, for instance, for me to have pronounced in a particular way around specific areas, for an example, is because I've had to enroll expertise of people that are qualified and are professionals in the field of security, for an example, to then say, but how exactly do you explain this? In the same way that the Minister of Police, who's also dealing and presenting this report before you, is not a chief fire expert. And because he's not, he has had to engage with fire experts and let this thing get explained and demonstrated as we did, and so on. So that. I think that clarifies the point, because the mere fact that I'm talking about security matters and so on does not make me a security expert per se. However, granted, within the portfolio that I operate in, you also do have security experts, and also generally out there in our republic. The report was presented at various stages, for instance, before cabinet. It's just that I can't remember the exact sort of dates. I know that at some point, it was presented, and of course, presented, and then of course, I needed to go back and work on certain aspects of it together with the Minister of Public Works in certain areas. Look, what is of importance here is that the report was worked upon in the manner in which we did, and of course presented what our analysis is of the issues in question, and therefore the question of the conclusions that we arrived at. I don't know. I mean, just a house. I think it sounds like a political statement to me. I don't know whether is that what I view as just a house. Certainly it is a homestead. In rural areas, we don't have houses. We have homesteads. Perhaps in urban areas, that's what you have, because a house is just a house, just there. But in rural areas, you have all these sorts of different sort of architecture and structures, and then therefore you have homesteads. Indeed, it is a homestead. That's what I see. Yeah, but I do not know as to what you were saying about, do I see it as just a house? Because I don't see a house there. I see a homestead, which is generally the kind of architecture that, broadly speaking, in most rural areas, you find these homesteads of sorts, of one form or the other. Minister, is there any?
No. I've established from my notes, that's why I was opening this thing, that like I said, the public protector did have access and did inspection in loco in the area. No, that's what I was checking from my notes. Otherwise, I'm comfortable with other areas. Thank you. Unless there's something I didn't answer.
Maybe let's do the last round here. Pretoria, are you still there? Yeah.
Thank you, Musa. We have one follow-up question in Pretoria.
Minister Karen here from Power FM again. Thank you for answering the second part of my question. The first part just related to whether you would recommend to the President to perhaps pursue these violations of his rights through the judiciary. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just quickly dispense with that question? Sorry. No, my apologies, ma'am, that I question. Certainly, if I was intending to do that, in the report itself that contains a section on findings and recommendations, I would have made that point quite explicitly there. All I was saying is an observation that I was making in relation to how this matter, both previously and in the recent times, has necessarily been done. But the point simply is that I'm not recommending that to the President or anyone. I just made an observation. That's it. But if I had intentions to recommend in that sort of direction, I would have had it in the set of recommendations that I'm making in the report. So again, apologies for the mere fact that I did not respond to this question earlier.
Andrew Barnes, ENCA. A question for the Public Works Minister. After so many years and over 200 million rand spent, how do you expect the public to react to the news that we actually need to spend even more money at Nkandla? And do you have even a ballpark figure as to how much it's going to cost to finish the job?
Minister, the fact that we've put all that under investigation shows that we are serious. We've put question marks in relation to all the pricing. And if you look into our report, the breakdown which were given there, what was spent around security, if you read our report, was around 71 million, including consultancy fees. All others, it's outside that, and it's public buildings of the various departments. So if you look into that, that is why we are also having questions around the way that expenditure was. It was not supposed to be at that particular level. I think we have said this matter repeatedly. That's why we're putting people to answer. That's why we're taking people to the various courts and so on.
Do you not have a ballpark figure as to how much more needs to be spent?
You see, the problem is that what was speculated by the media of 246, we don't know where it came from. Our figure, we're able to give it the 71 plus 135,000, which came to 216. That's the figure which we gave. We don't show where this other figure, which was projected and so on, that it's 246 million came from. We don't know about that. And what we said also, let's allow for the investigations to conclude. Then we go back and say, what is it which has not been finalized? But we must first do a careful review together with the police based on the police report, so that we don't repeat the previous mistake of the wastage, overpricing, and so on and so on. But we remain to say we will implement what has been recommended by those who are in security to deal with the security of the president, the previous president, and deputy president, as is the norm.
With respect, so you're not answering my question. Do you know how much more money needs to be spent at Nkandla, or don't you know?
We don't know. We would just rely on the police. What they said needs to be reviewed, needs to be done.
Minister, apologies if this question has been asked and answered already. But in terms of the hierarchy of the various reports that have been done on this matter, where does your report fall? Is it the final say? Is it a done deal, no further probes needed, the end of the road? All Parliament needs to do is consider this report.
From Andy.
No, the minister didn't answer my other question. The president's reaction to being told that he doesn't have anything to pay.
Really? I think, ma'am, I've answered this question about the hierarchy. Oh, no, not about the hierarchy, because there was no question about the hierarchy. Sorry. But in your phrasing, you say the hierarchy and so forth. The fact is, there is a process that has been followed, which culminated to Parliament adopting a resolution, which then directed as to how and what the minister needed to do. And this is the reaction and the product of the work that has been done in relation to the resolution adopted by Parliament. Now, but as part of processing, this report has been tabled with Parliament. The same report that we're dealing with has been tabled with Parliament. And it is for Parliament to then process the matter in the manner in which it deems fit. And then arrive at a particular conclusion about this matter, and so on. So, and I did say that it's my understanding is that it's not a report that stands in relation to other reports in terms of weight and everything else. It's a report that speaks to the 4 areas that the public protector raised as non-security comforts. For an example, the cattle kraal, the amphitheater, the swimming pool. What's the other thing? The cattle kraal, the cattle kraal. The four areas and so on. In the presentation of the report, I was not looking at the reaction of individuals in cabinet, for instance, when I processed this particular matter. So I wouldn't know how the president really reacted. I don't know what I don't know what his reaction was in relation to this. I presented the report before a structure of government, and that's it. And a resolution was then taken for the report to be referred to Parliament for further processing and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yo ladies, newsflash! Did you know that in every South African election over the past 20 years, women have outnumbered men in voting? How cool is that? Big up ladies, you rock. So get registered and keep the girl power going.
He didn't wash his hands. With those hands. Man. Then he is polluting the environment. Some people just don't understand. Sanitation is about hygiene, health, and a clean environment.
Sanitation. It's not all about flushing. This message is brought to you by the Department of Water and Sanitation.
Live from Johannesburg, South Africa, this is the PM News Desk. I'm Kirshni Govender. Well, you've been watching a live crossing to Police Minister Nathi Nhleko press briefing on the Nkandla report underway in Cape Town. Well, the minister has determined that President Jacob Zuma is not liable to pay for those security upgrades at his Nkandla residence in KwaZulu-Natal. Well, time to take a look at this afternoon's headlines. And we start at home. Police Minister Nathi Nhleko determines that President Jacob Zuma is not liable to pay for any security upgrades at his Nkandla home. The South African government denies any wrongdoing over